right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining the support partner meeting, HILT Network. And we are very excited on this June 27th, 2024. To start out, one of the things that we are going to ask everybody is to go ahead and just introduce yourself into the group chat. I did put that in the group chat there if you want to include your name, your organization, and your role. And we have been getting requests from individuals. Absolutely, Patricia, drive safely. We have been getting requests from individuals to include your email. And part of that is so that if you want, people can connect with you, or if you want to do a private chat, that's always, definitely something you can do. But if you include your email, then people can follow up with you if they have additional questions for any of that information that we're sharing. So thank you very much. And I am sharing a slide deck just now. So if you are looking on multiple monitors, make sure that you're doing that as well, and we will get started. In today's meeting, obviously in the chat box, we're going to include all that information. And then the meeting etiquette is to keep yourself unmuted unless you're speaking. And then, of course, you can use the chat functions freely. So thank you for that. The HILT purpose is to be a network of diverse, small, and large healthcare providers in Seattle, King County, and Snohomish and Pierce, where we come together and take action to improve access to a skilled healthcare workforce and everything in between. Since we launched in May 2018, we've been making improvements in equity and diversity within the healthcare workforce and guiding principles for HILT and all its committees. The goals for today, and once again, this is a snapshot from the in-person meeting. We're going to basically review the in-person quarterly meeting presentations, and we had some fabulous presentations, and we do have some representation here as well. And then we'll be looking at identifying ways that we can come together to address workforce challenges and needs. So anything that we hear from the presentation and those discussions, and even the discussion today, we want to kind of see if there's areas that we can move forward and be supportive. So we're going to be reviewing the quarterly conversation cycle, and that's just on the next slide to kind of talk about how we structure these meetings. We're going to be looking at the spring quarterly meeting highlights, and this is not everything in those presentations. This is really just kind of the highlights in that area, and then looking at ways to lean in. So once we kind of hear that information, what are ways that we can come together as support partners and in support of healthcare? And then, of course, we've got announcements as always. We have upcoming meetings and ways to kind of lean in the conversations as well. Kind of as an old review, just kind of that quarterly conversation cycle. One of the things that we want to highlight is, we just finished the quarterly meeting. And if you had the opportunity to be there, that was in person at Sound Administration in Tukwila. It was a fantastic meeting. We started with, some networking activities, and then we went right into presentations. And from that meeting comes the support partner meeting, which we're attending today. And what we do is we look at the quarterly and we try to understand what's going on and have deeper discussion from a support partner perspective. And so we look to ways that we can lean in together. And then from that, we look at the student experience package. And these are those initiatives that are led by the WOBS project manager and WOBS in conjunction with the HILT. And so those are the Speakers Bureau, the career events, and the day in the life videos as well. So we'll be looking at some of that information. And so just want to recognize our HILT captain that's here in attendance. We have Angie. Angie is here from Kaiser Permanente, who actually has been part of HILT since the start. And my brag of Angie is that when you look at the HILT website, she is in that main picture. She told me that in a conversation, and I was like, wow, I've looked at this picture probably 100 times and never realized that that was Angie. So, because it's kind of, you see from behind, you don't see the front part of Angie. So, but welcome. Just kind of as a show of hands, who was able to attend the quarterly in-person meeting? I do see some familiar faces here. Yeah, we do have quite a bit. So for those that did attend the meeting, this is a discussion that you are more than welcome to add comments. I'm not the only speaker here. If you have some kind of important part that you want to say on a slide, by all means, please come off of mute and join in on the conversation. We're kind of a smaller group today, so I think this facilitates a little bit that people can kind of just chime on in. I did see Brenda join us. Welcome, Brenda. Really good to see you. So we're going to start in with our first presentation here, and we had two guest speakers. We had Dr. Mila Sprouse, who's the VP of Chief Nursing Officer in Patient Care Services at Virginia Mason Medical Center out of Seattle. Dr. Sprouse was one of two presenters and presented with Renee Raisenlier-Bombers, who's the Chief Nursing Officer at Providence, Swedish at Central Puget Sound. And together, what they did is they did a presentation on artificial intelligence and healthcare. And it was a really fascinating conversation because when we look at artificial intelligence, the question has always been, how long has it been with us? Do we use it all the time? Is it part of our daily lives? And the answer is yes, yes, and yes. It has been here for quite some time, in different iterations. But really, as we start looking at healthcare, it's how does that make that impact in the healthcare system that we look at? So some of the areas that they described and talked about was the overview of artificial intelligence, as we're very familiar with how that's impacting some of our daily lives, the benefits, importance, and applications of AI, and then even looking at enhanced care ethics and future trends. So who here has been involved with AI in different iterations? And I'm going to go ahead and ask y'all to come off of mute and just add in your comments. When we think of AI, what kind of AI have we been kind of engaging with? One of the ways that I've been engaging with, and I tell people this all the time, is with our smartphones. When I am asking something, when I'm looking for information, that is engaging in a form of AI. What other ways in AI have we been engaging with?
Well, I'll pipe in and say that from a recruiting perspective, AI gets used a lot in advertising. We've started to do like retargeted advertising. So just like when you go to Amazon and you look at a pair of shoes, and then all of a sudden, every time you go anywhere, you see that pair of shoes.
Yeah.
It's similar to, advertising for recruitment, where you may go on a website or you might click on an ad or to learn more about us, and then that ad will then follow you. And we've actually seen a lot of great success from a consistent candidate engagement perspective that way. So that's been pretty cool.
That's right. And that's why I'm almost afraid to even mention a product with my phone around, because then all of a sudden I see all those ads, right?
Yep.
And we do. You definitely see that. Thank you, Angie, for that. Just how it's being used in that area and space. That's really fascinating. What other ways do we have examples of the way AI is impacting our lives? Yeah, Pamela, please.
I would add generally Chat GPT and all the metaverse, which is starting to sort of tie all of our searches together, so it becomes a deeper research and development platform for us.
That's right. Yeah, everything's kind of coming together, right? Especially post-COVID, we can kind of see a lot of those advancements. What other examples do we have of AI in our lives? I'm thinking about obviously my phone is one way. There's other ways that we engage with AI, even in healthcare. What are some ways in healthcare or behavioral health that we look at AI and its uses? I was at my doctor's appointment recently, and based on my questionnaire, they did kind of a predictive analytics of my health. And so that I found really interesting as well. And of course, when we do that, there's some few different considerations we want to have, and we'll be diving into those considerations as well as we kind of progress into the conversation a little bit. But when we think about artificial intelligence, a lot of things that it kind of happens, right? So typically it's been for actions that have been repetitive, right? So it's performing those tasks that we've seen AI kind of come in and make a big impact. It's even the development of algorithms, as Angie was kind of putting out there as well, whereas I was talking about my phone. We even have geofencing, right? And that's more SEO, which is search engine optimization. But in geofencing, they can virtually put a barrier around a specific building or area or county. And every time you drive through that county, you'll get an ad that is indicative of that paid search engine optimization on your phone. They do that with competitive, products as well, or maybe hospital systems are even utilizing that in technology as well. So there's lots of things to kind of do with AI. But one of the things that we've been looking at is in healthcare. And when we look at healthcare, it's been using AI and different analytics, but now it's becoming even more robust. And I just want to open it up a little bit here as far as what are the ways that we see AI kind of impact healthcare. And, if you can give us tangible, real life examples of what that looks like, we want to hear that. So how are you seeing AI impact healthcare? And in what examples could you share with that? Well, as I described, we have the analytics, right? The predictive analytics. That's one way that we're looking at it. In addition, when you look at kind of those evaluation rooms and so forth, even in there to kind of target hand washing or any other kind of behind the scenes benchmark that a system is trying to use. In addition, when we look at AI as well as when they take your vital signs, it's no longer always that blood pressure cuff that's manual. Now you have it tied to a machine that does it electronically, and then that data kind of gets put into a predictive analytics or even some kind of chart mechanism as well. So when you look here, we can see that AI is not necessarily new in healthcare because we have these examples here where the Rothman Index looks at illness severity and kind of does some predictive information with that. Or we look at kind of some other uses of analytics in healthcare as well. So when we look at kind of examples, we can see that we've seen it in a lot of different areas, right? In diagnostic and prediction, as I was talking about before, we see it in personalized treatment as well. And you can kind of see some of the examples in visual health assistance. We look at chat boxes all the time and virtual nurses. I know that there's that joke when I'm on the phone and I'm screaming or yelling, operator, operator, because you get tied into that kind of circle of AI chat boxes, if you will. And sometimes, and they're really smart. And the part that I was really impressed with was I was on a call and I was with a bot. And I love how they're like, 1 moment, please. And you hear the noise as if they're typing. You hear the noise as if they're doing something and you're waiting. And all I could think is like, wow, this is really crazy. Because once again, they're putting that human element right into that service. What are some other ways that we've seen AI around us? What examples come to mind? Well, I'm going to call on people just to see if we can get some examples because I think AI infuses our life a lot. I was going to call on Brenda because I know Brenda, and Brenda is a good colleague of mine. Hi, Brenda.
I knew it. I was
Yeah,
like,
and
he's gonna
well,
call
we've
me.
had these conversations before about AI and just kind of these automation portions of it here. Brenda, do you have any examples that you could share on how AI is impacting either healthcare or your life or, just the way we exist? I mean, what kind of comes to mind?
Sure. Well, from a communications perspective, of course, I've been utilizing Grammarly and those sort of AI-backed programs to help double check my work. It helps to ensure that we're communicating in a high level of accuracy. I still send it out to my coworkers too, though. And I will, as an older generation, probably um, be a little slower on the uptake on the AI. I know that I have tried in AI because to get around finding image for social media posts or website and outreach. I have tried AI, but to not very good results. Like the hands do look weird and we look a little bit like pieced together parts. So I haven't been very happy with my experience there, but I'm sure that will also continue to improve. It does help make Photoshop, InDesign, it helps to, removing backgrounds and things like that is very helpful. For healthcare, You know, yes, it's been in healthcare for a while, but I just think we're seeing it a whole nother level or evolution of it. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes. Yeah, it might be for the younger folks to take. And I'm not sure that
Oh, come on, Brenda. We're not that
I've
old.
had this conversation with myself, like I should take some class, I need to engage, right? But you know, once I'm 65 or once I'm retired, I'm gonna, you know, check out of it. I'm like, I'm not sure. So, but I'm a way from there. So
That's right.
but yeah, you know, at some point in time, we might be able to just open our laptop and say, I don't feel good. There might be the ability to do scanning, like on Star Trek, and from home. And that at that point, we can get an initial checkup before we talk to a live person, as long as it's assisting in the connection with trained people. I think it can be very helpful.
All right. Well, thank you. Thanks for those comments and expanded use of AI. I'm looking at the comment boxes. I see Christina's put chat boxes on websites. We see a lot of that kind of happening. And you do know when you're with a bot because they can't seem to answer your question all the time. We see Pamela put in tracking, scheduling, surveillance, and data collection. Pamela, do you have an example of how that's used? I mean, I see the actions. Just is that more at work or do you think just in general? Oh, and you're on mute, just so you know.
Apologies. Just with a general understanding of how AI is working and how it's developing, it's been a stand-in for lots of basically human touch, busy work, administration, and tying together loose ends, linking people together, making sure schedules, sync, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, tracking medications, all sorts of things like that. It's probably still already doing.
Right. No, I would agree. Thank you. Yeah. And Patricia, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you guys can hear me okay, because I am having trouble hearing you all on my phone.
Oh, you are? We can
No, but
hear
I don't think
you.
it's you. I think it's my phone because I'm
Oh,
driving.
okay.
So
Yes.
are you able to hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Okay, so one of the things that I've seen make a big impact on me, and by the way, I disagree that we're too old for AI. I think it's going to help the mature generation the most, because imagine we can just start pulling things out of the box and saying, set up my phone for me and drive my car for me. And like, I cannot wait for that to happen. But where I've seen it impact healthcare in my own position is in human resources.
Mm.
I recently hired for a position, and I feel like I could tell the difference between an AI written um, application or resume and cover letter versus a like a actual personal written one. And what I did see is that the AI was writing that resume and cover letter more advanced than the person actually is in their career. So
Oh,
that's kind of just a heads up for those that might start seeing that. Really do your due diligence, because it's pulling out all the stops to make that person look good, regardless of where their experience and their education lies. So just something I've noticed.
yeah, really good points. And I think we see it not only in the applications, but in the resumes. And also, I've heard that people will take a job description, put it in AI, and give me the top 5 traits that we want to highlight in a resume, and it'll pull out those 5 different areas as well that are most relevant. Yeah, so lots of different uses for that, man. So thank you for that. And then, of course, we can always talk about students. We know that teachers are struggling through some of those AI papers that are written maybe not genuinely by students and being submitted, and all those other kind of crazy uses of it, if you will. So, and I think, when we look at it completely, we want to look at it as a tool and not necessarily as the source of which all things come to be true. So we'll look at a few different examples here. We got research and drug development. We look with data mining. We look at radiation therapy planning as well, and you're looking at some of those predictive analytics, and and then we look at operations and surgeries. I mean, we look at robots creating surgeries now and doing all that. We look at laparoscopic surgery that has a lot of advancements in that healing time. Yeah, Brenda. Or maybe you put your hand up on accident.
Yeah, I put it up by mistake. I'm so sorry. I thought I
No
lowered.
worries.
Apologize.
No, not at all. Thank you. Administrative efficiency. We have billing and coding, resource allocation as well. And then of course, it's just looking at that data as, when you keep that data year after year, it's really looking at some of those predictive analytics once again to see about attendance, outreach, talent acquisition, and uses. And then, of course, lots of natural language processing and healthcare fraud detection. That was kind of a big one as well. When you look at kind of the way that they're looking at data and that reoccurrence, there's analytics that are watching a lot of these things as we kind of keep moving on in our lives here. So when we look at AI support and technology, we want to understand the goal and the impact. That's always important because a lot of times, you can use data to support whatever mission that you have and in that perspective, but we want to look at it with a lot of transparency and looking at how those stories are made. And then, of course, looking at that data integrity, the information is only as good as the information we put in. And then, of course, guardrail development, right? We can't just take something as face value. And I know we've heard about the lawyer who used some kind of case with AI in the chat box, and that was invalid. And I want to say they got in some very big legal trouble as well. So kind of what are those guardrails that we need to be putting with AI? And does anyone have any ideas on the guardrails? What would you assume we need to kind of be watchful for? I mean, obviously we want to have good data in to have good data out, watching all those areas there. What are some areas that we want to be looking at for guardrails? Yes, Brenda.
Yeah, from a research perspective, I think just like any resource or reference page, I think that any use of AI should be noted, whether in the beginning or the end. If it's used extensively, then I think that should also be clarified. And if you just use it in certain paragraphs, maybe that we can create a signal, something that lets the audience know. Because in writing, because the facts can be not accurate, I think it's important for the reader to be signaled in those instances, especially when it comes to research and those sort of applications.
Yeah, thank you for that. So yeah, lots of good uses with AI. We looked at predictive scheduler as well. That was something that was highlighted at the meeting. So looking at the way that, patients come in, what kind of acuity rate are they going to have? What kind of needs do they need? And then obviously trying to put the appropriate amount of staff to kind of look at that. So lots of good uses here. We can see that there's AI platforms as well, like Epic. We have Copilot and Oracle. If you've not used AI just yet, we really recommend for you to give it a try. Just kind of put your finger in it and give it a little test run, if you will. Very good and uses for that. And so it's definitely something that's changing the way that we live our life. When we look at AI technology support services, of course, you can see the messages that are generated in addition. And so you want to kind of be weary of those because sometimes it's not the correct information that's being produced for you. So I do have friends that if they see something online, they think it's fact. But in course, we want to be fact checking and making sure that we are having genuine, good data for that as well. So it was a really good discussion with AI and obviously looking at enhancing care in a lot of these different areas here. And so healthcare is utilizing AI and it's really embracing that. And when you look at AI in healthcare, it's such an important aspect, not only for as a support, but also to continue doing those guardrails so that we know that information is good going in and coming out of that as well. So in the ethical considerations, obviously it's to be responsible, be transparent. I think Brenda kind of highlighted some of that transparency, and then patient at the center. You once again, if you know, when we look at kind of bias and all those other areas, those are some things that we need to continue to scrutinize and put guardrails up to make sure that we're using that data effectively here. Here's some other examples of ethical considerations here, and you know, and I'm gonna point over to John a little bit. John, and the reason I'm pointing over to you because I feel like some of your work in kind of you know, equity and all the different considerations. Do you see AI impacting some of that work, or you know, where do you see the guardrails at? I mean, what ideas do you have for AI and the way it's used in business? Could you kind of give us a few of your thoughts?
Thank you. You know, as far for guardrails, I think it's important to understand that when there is output from AI, that the value of it would be decreased if it was generated by AI. There needs to be transparency. Um, you know, if the assumption is that this is coming from a human source and that's considered value, then for it to be generated artificially and then passed off as something that is um, assumed to be generated by a human, I think is really important in those cases. It's not unlike they can make synthetic rubies that are chemically and you know, structurally the same as natural rubies, but the perceived value of a natural stone is such, right? And then so, you know, ethically, they um, provide a tag, right? A way of identifying that it is in fact synthetically produced. Um, you know, in equity work, so much is dependent upon one of two things, right? It's were the people who were sort of closest to the issue part of the effort to address it, and was the result something that achieved meeting people where they're at, like balancing the difference between standardization and differentiation so that more people are served. Um, and so in that context, um, so much is to be gained from uh, human interaction, because at the heart of when people are in the center is trust,
Mm.
right? And so right now, AI is at a stage, right, where there's a lot of distrust. And much of it stems from the notion that the reason for which it is being deployed is nefarious. People have been burned a lot. And so I would say slow roll in terms of if you're doing equity work, how you're deploying AI, and don't let it, for the sake of efficiency, right, destroy the human relationships that are at the heart of addressing equity.
Thank you, John. Thank you for those comments. And you know, you're exactly right. I think there's a lot of ways that people are utilizing AI for various reasons. But I will say that at the end of this presentation, when on the quarterly, it was, you know, one of the big takeaways was it all requires humans to be part and the center of the work and of the processes. So you can't use that human touch and being genuine. And I know I kept kind of seeing Brenda's thumbs up with a lot of things you were saying, John. So I think there's a lot of agreement into those words. So thank you so much for that.
You know, it's just a funny little anecdote
Yeah.
about that issue is when you come onto a call for a customer service call, and the first thing they say is this call is being recorded for quality purposes. And, you know, you realize that the quality purpose is to gather the data to train AI,
Mm, mm,
and not what you assume, which is that, oh, well, this is so that customer service reps on the phone will be better at what they do, right? But
Right.
instead they're training AI with it. Feels like a break of trust, right? They're using words that are technically correct, but they're building it off of assumption that it's for a purpose other than what they are actually using it for. So next time you hear that, like think about it. It's like, do you really think that this is really being done to like improve quality, or do you think this is being collected so that it can train AI so it can start answering questions a little bit more quickly and more efficiently, without revealing, that it is in fact AI?
I never thought about it that way, John. Thank you for that. So now I always thought that they were going to use it to train people. That was just where my assumption still lives. But yeah, you're exactly right. I think you're right. They do utilize a lot of that for that technology purpose as well. Wow. Yeah, good insights. Yeah, Brenda.
Thank you, John. Oh, sorry. I'm trying to turn on my video. I apologize.
Yes.
I think again, you're like you said, James, centering the human, and I just worry about if this thing is here to make our world and our life better and easier, does everybody have access to it? Is everybody going to receive that benefit, or are only certain people, certain classes, certain going to receive that benefit? And is it to the detriment of other people, and people who have already historically been denied access to resources and things? And so I do think it's a very, ethical, and I agree with John. There can be great things about it, but it has to be entered into slowly, and we have to send, to your point, James, center the human first. And I just don't know that we're going to do that. I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, what a really good point to talk about equity in that sense, about access to the technology and uses and who has the ability to kind of harness that ability. So, wow, that's definitely something good to think about, because as this kind of gets more, mainstream in the way that we live, who has that privilege to utilize it. So, thank you, Brenda, for those comments. Man. Really good discussion. So really appreciate everyone's comments on that. When we look at kind of the future and revolutionize the nursing profession, you can kind of see here the way it's been utilized a little bit as well. And we even kind of think about simulation. I know when we think about those mannequins as well, that students are utilizing that technology, and I know they're coming up with kind of tenets for that work. It's really looking at all those different areas, but I think as John and Brenda and a lot of people have said here, there is that human part of that. And so we don't want to lose that human part. We can't leave it up to all the computers to do all the work and cannot have that oversight. We definitely need to be deeply embedded into that process as well. So we're going to transition here in a little bit. Just want to open it up to anyone who had any additional comments regarding AI in healthcare. Okay.
Hey, James,
Yeah.
For those who are in such a rush to AI everything, I just say, have you not watched any science fiction movies? Like, has it ever come out really good for humans? I don't think there's a single example.
Yeah, when you look at kind of those films and movies and TV shows, it is kind of interesting how we follow suit in a lot of those areas as well. So, yeah, good input. Thank you for that, John. So now we're going to switch over. We had a second presentation by Todd Jensen, and Todd was on this call earlier. It looks like he had to leave, but he's the Behavioral Health Workforce Coordinator at the Washington State Healthcare Authority, and he presented on a few different things. He first presented on behavioral health workforce projects, and so we're going to kind of dive into that a little bit with that information. And one of the things that you'll see in behavioral health is there is a startyourpath.org, and if you've not visited that website, that is definitely a website to kind of check out. If you want to take a look at that, there is a lot of attention, as we know, in behavioral health, and for very good reasons. We have the need, we have the crisis that are happening across our nation and globally in different aspects, but really it's putting a deeper emphasis on behavioral health. In addition, we also have other efforts that are happening in our ecosystem as well. Like we have the Balmer grant that is producing, individuals with a master's in social work to kind of help with that effort as well. So there's a lot of attention happening because the crisis is here with behavioral health. So when we look at kind of these campaigns, this is something that they are asking everyone. If you have the ability to list that startyourpath.org in your website at your organization, that is a way to be helpful as well. Because, if we continue kind of building these different areas in behavioral health and the importance of it, we can continue expanding that service and career pathways for students. We recently just had the Sound Careers in Healthcare, and we had behavioral health represented there. But one of the questions that has come up, and I'll pose this to this group, is what does it look like visually if we were to visually show people in behavioral health? What could that look like so that students could identify that person? Ah, you work in behavioral health. We do that with nurses, we do that with doctors, we do that with physicians, we do that with in a lot of different areas, we do that with some of the trades. But what is that uniform for someone who works in behavioral health? What is that visual representation? And I ask that because one of the priorities is how can we start representing this for students, that visual marketing aspect of it. So if you have any ideas and you have anything you want to share, after this meeting, or if an idea comes to you, please do reach out with that. But here you kind of see Start Your Path here, and it's really looking for students to kind of understand behavioral health, because I think one of the questions that was posed to students is, what is behavioral health? And some students could answer it pretty well, and then a lot of people could not. And so once again, there's that learning curve that we need to kind of be aware of with students and understanding that work and pathway with behavioral health. When we look at the Washington State Healthcare Authority, you can see here the marketing goal is obviously increase awareness and interest in behavioral health careers. Because once again, not every student knows the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and what's different with that. What is therapy, right? When we talk about therapy, behavioral health therapy or counseling therapy, and just what are those different ideas that we can kind of start sharing with students so that they expand their knowledge in behavioral health. So that's one of the big initiatives that has been happening. And in this campaign, once again, one of the asks is to have people put that website on your business page so we can continue expanding and really increase that marketing for that ad. And you can see some of the impressions, the video completers, and the landing page sessions that have kind of landed there. And it's really important for us, not only as the HILT, but us as a region or even a state, and obviously as a nation, to kind of keep this forefront in front of students as we continue expanding their knowledge in behavioral health. So there's a lot of good intention with that. And when we look at that, there is a partner toolkit that is available as well. If you're looking at behavioral health for expanding that ownership of students or even young professionals or even incumbent workers, it's how can we start educating individuals in behavioral health professions. Does anyone have anything that they've used in behavioral health to kind of start, expanding that understanding for people to understand those pathways or training, or even what that looks like from a role specific realm? How have you been able to share behavioral health pathways with people?
Hi,
Yes,
James.
go.
This is
Hi, Vanya.
Vonetta. I can speak up. I will say I apologize. I think I have unstable Wi-Fi today, but I wanted to say that through the Balmer Behavioral Health Scholarship Program and the Washington State Behavioral Health Workforce Development Initiative, we do have a career support component of our work, and it's more of a resource center. We have a Todd and others reached out years ago when they were launching Start Your Path. But I also know that with House Bill 1946, we're going to want to have more marketing of what does it look like to be a behavioral health clinician, and how can we market the job? So I would say the career support component is really important.
Yeah, thank you, Vanetta, for that. And Vanetta, have you seen effective ways in trying to educate people, like in high school, or I mean, would that be, with a website, or is it conversations, or is it with teachers, or have you seen anything that kind of has worked well, or things that we want to continue supporting?
I think it's really just starting off when we think about going a little further, going upstream, as people like to say. From my perspective, I would say it is the Balmer behavior.
I think we just saw that internet
But I know,
interruption.
was there a delay?
You froze just for a little bit. If you want to say that one more time.
Sure. So I think that through the Behavioral Health Workforce or Skills Committee of the HILT, we have started to embark upon the strategy number 3, which is to create greater alignment between academia and the behavioral health needs. So we're just starting off, and we're really, but we haven't tapped back to technical colleges or high schools yet. We really need to think more strategically about that.
Thank you, Vanetta. Really appreciate those comments.
Mm-hmm.
Other things that are working, other things that are, expanding the knowledge base for, students, incumbent workers, young professionals, even seasoned professionals to start, understand what behavioral health is and how can we continue supporting those efforts. Hey, Dan.
Hey, James. Sorry I'm late to this
Oh, that's
meeting. We
okay.
had the State Health Workforce Council met today in Yakima, and we just finished. And it took me a while to log on to I have to update my Zoom or something like that. Anyways, a couple things. We spoke at length. During the council meeting today, we actually highlighted a number of initiatives that are going on around behavioral health. And one was some good work done by the Central Washington AHEC that did some work in North Central up in the OMAC region. And interesting enough, there was a very large percentage of students that expressed interest at the high school level in behavioral health careers. So really kind of leveraging that work of the AHECs, I think, is going to be pretty important, and maybe creating some specialized curriculum to include behavioral health occupations in their traditional scrubs camps that they do at the again at the AHECs. There was a lot of discussions today around legislation that has supported the community behavioral health organizations and their efforts to support student clinical training opportunities and precepting of students in clinical settings. And a lot of conversation or there was some highlighting of some work that has been done by 3 different ACHs in Washington State, Greater Health Now, the Thriving Together, which is the North Central region, and Swatch, which is the Southwest ACH. And the work that they've done to implement, I think it's either House Bill or Senate Bill 1504, and they're supporting the various efforts to increase or expand clinical training opportunities. So it's one thing that add numbers, but if you don't increase capacity to provide training or clinical training, then it creates that kind of roadblock. So that's a very important piece of the overall workforce ecosystem pie. One of the things that was called out was flexibility in spending or in program development. So limiting it to, trying to get away from just limiting it to community behavioral health organizations, because there's a lot of people, there's a lot of organizations that provide behavioral health, mental health that aren't community behavioral health organizations. There are others, FQHCs, community-based organizations. And so thinking about how do we support those sites as training to provide them incentives to provide that clinical training to behavioral health organizations. The other piece, if you don't mind me saying, the other piece that we really paid attention to today at the Health Workforce Council was looking at diversity. And I'm sure from a King County perspective, or in Pierce and Snohomish County, the HILT area, you can definitely resonate with this. But in Yakima County, where the focus was today and yesterday, we have a very, very high amount of students that are the people in the workforce, and 80% of the workforce in Yakima County health workforce are female.
Wow.
We live in a minority majority county, where the majority of the county is Latinx, and the fastest growing population in the county is Latinx. And the youngest population group in the county is Latinx. So if you put all these things together, we need to be growing our Latinx workforce, because they're the ones who are going to be living here in the county. So a lot of significant kind of data points there to pay attention to. Anyways, I will stop.
No, thank you, Dan. No, really appreciate that. Anybody have any additional comments, or even to kind of ask Dan or respond to what Dan said? I see Patricia.
Dan?
Yeah.
I want to say thank you always for shouting out and supporting the AHECs, Dan. We always appreciate you. Just also want to add that not all AHECs traditionally do scrubs camps. We all have kind of our niche programs that we do. However, Southwest Washington has written in behavioral health to their scope of work with Department of Health. So if anybody wants to partner on this or do that work in Southwest, which is an 11 county region starting in King County and moving down to Vancouver and over to the mountainous regions, I would love to partner in that work. We get started on that scope of work in July. So if you have any ideas or input for me, especially Dan, if you're thinking about something, please reach out to me. I'd love to hear that. I also, just so you all know, the scope of work that we're doing is to going into a couple of rural regions and talking about low cost and no cost healthcare opportunities for training, for career training, including military, including community and technical colleges, but especially highlighting the rural health and critical access hospitals, and of course, federally qualified health centers that have free or no cost training for those youth. So behavioral health is right in that spectrum. And so again, if anybody wants to partner on that work or sharing that work, please reach out to me. My information is in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Pat. I really appreciate that. Yeah, Vonetta, I did see your hand up, and I was going to open it back up to you to see if you had some comments you wanted to share. Just want to keep that open communication. And Vonetta might be experiencing some technical difficulties. I'm not 100%, but Vonetta, if you are able to talk, feel free to, or we will be moving on a little bit to the next slide.
Thank you, James. I'll chat. That's okay. Thank you.
Oh, we can hear you now.
So thank you. I'll be brief. I just wanted to take advantage of the Ask Dan section and ask Dan, if this is not too inside baseball, to ask if there was any discussion in your meetings about the skills or the requirements that SAMHSA is requiring of certified community behavior health agencies. or centers. Has that come up?
That was not so we did a health workforce listening session yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and the full health workforce council for the state was met today at PNWU. That was noted in our listening session with employers regarding requirements and kind of the rigor or the of these requirements kind of constantly shifting, and the challenges of organizations being able to meet the shifting kind of landscape of all of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, just the shifting landscape of the regulatory environment and the challenges that has. And so we heard about that from employers here in our community.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All
Thanks,
right. Any
Dave.
last? Yeah. Any last comments for behavioral health? All right. Well, if you want to check out that website, that's a really good and robust one. And if you can put that on your organizational landing page as well, that's how we move that up in the search engine optimization, and people are looking for those resources as well. We did have an update at the quarterly meeting for legislative updates. We're not going to go over them here because they were quite lengthy. But if you want to see the full HILT slide deck that includes those updates, you just go to the HILT.com website, scroll all the way down on the first page. You'll see the most recent quarterly slide deck that is up there already. You just click that button and you should be able to download and have access to that slide deck easily. If you have any trouble whatsoever, please do not hesitate to give me a message, and I'm happy to help walk you through that or send you that presentation again. But those are where the legislative updates live currently. The next presentation we had, and so we had 3 presentations, which were fantastic at the quarterly. We had the AI in healthcare, the behavioral health and legislative updates, and then we had the Sound Careers in Healthcare by WOBS. And WOBS did a fantastic job of giving us some of that information. As you know, this is one of the initiatives for the HILT network, and this is the student experience package, and this is career events for students. And one of the things that we did is we looked at kind of a few different things. The theme was an Imagine a Future in Healthcare, and we had it on March 21st, and March 28th was a virtual. And so the event was fantastic. WOBS did a fantastic job in corralling everybody, facilitating all the training that needed to happen, and then actually executing for the day of at University of Washington. If you were there, it was an exciting time. Students were excited, hands-on experiences. It's kind of one of our big events that I think everybody feels really good about being at, because we're really educating the students at that point as well. So we had over 30 hands-on activities for students, and these were active hands-on activities. So it's not just information sharing, it's really doing the work, doing the little activities. We saw, big mouths when students were brushing their teeth, or looking at PT and all the different areas with that as well. So in combined, we had over 500 students that we touched in day 1 and day 2 combined. So that was really a big win. Some new additions, as we continue doing these events each year, different iterations and additions kind of keep coming on. But we had a reflective prayer space that was added. This event was during Ramadan, and wanted to be respectful of those needs. We added name tags that had future, and students were able to write in what future healthcare profession they were going to be. Included a selfie booth that got a lot of good pictures and fun. And then, of course, we had a postcard that listed out those actionable next steps in a Linktree. And Linktree is a public website that has all the different resources. So even post this event, students still have access to those resources to kind of look at as well. For the first time, we had simulation technology that was actually there with mannequins and sharing that advancements for students. And then added gender identity question to the questionnaire as well. So yeah, lots of good input was happening, lots of great engagement. And one of the interesting things, and this is what WOBS shared with me, is that you know, when we had to limit the attendance roughly at around 500 just because of the space considerations at UW in the hub. But really, when we look at the demand or the want, really they, you know, in the schools that Wobbs works with, they could double that up to 1,000. And so when you look at across kind of our counties, the desire from students to attend real events and learn about healthcare is big. And it still lives very well in that space. So thank you to Wobbs for all that outreach and support and leadership, and really fantastic results that kind of came out of that. For the virtual event, we had a pre-recorded event. This was shortened by 30 minutes, and it was a webinar platform. This was offered to schools. However, in that, what we learned in offering that virtual is that students aren't really into virtual as much anymore. And what I mean is, you know, post-COVID, you know, during COVID, we know all the challenges that education had to face with students. I even saw my nephew on classes as well, where everybody is just a name. You don't even see people's pictures. I mean, I appreciate people coming off camera because it gives a little more life to the meeting. But in student world and education, all you saw was names, students were there, and we know some of those struggles. But coming post-COVID, students want in person, and that came across very clear for us as we kind of did that. We still did the virtual event. We had about, I believe, 32 students that attended that, and so they got the benefit. And we did a panel of experts, and we did one-on-one presentations as well with the pre-recorded medical case study as well. Thank you, Angie. Really appreciate your support. So kind of looking at that data a little bit here, you can kind of see here the numbers in 2024. You had the in-person at 491 plus the virtual at 32 for a total combined of 523. And you can kind of see the different results that kind of come here. Last year was the first year post-COVID, and I got to say it was very exciting. I think students were still kind of into that virtual space as well because we had over 300. But of course, things are changing now, and we're looking definitely to look at some of those changes as well as we ramp up for 2025. When we look at the goal of over half of the students were racially and geographically diverse, kudos to all the effort. That goal was met. We had over 75% that identified as BIPOC. The geographic makeup, you can kind of see here from the 3 different counties. And then women made up 71.2% of the event. That is similar what we see in healthcare professionally. When we look at healthcare, you know, 75% of the workforce is women or women identifying. And so these kind of stayed in line with some of those areas as well. And Christina, I'll just open it up. If there's anything that you want to add in, please don't hesitate at all. I will keep kind of talking through, but if there's any additional points that you want to add, please feel free. When we look here, we can kind of see the schools that kind of attended the event, and the ones in bold were the new schools that did not attend last year. So you can see that expanded reach kind of happening as well. And so once again, that interest remains high in students, which is fantastic. We want to remain high in those areas as well. And once again, you know, when we look at those numbers, you know, we roughly hit about 500 plus. You know, the need and the desire is great. It's over 1,000. So if we can look at kind of how to harness that passion from students and really how can we deliver those kind of experiences, we want to do that collaboratively and with your support. Here was another goal that was met. The in-person event increased students' understanding of healthcare and options so that they can make actionable next steps. So more aware of healthcare career choices, absolutely. That's what the event did. It expanded all that learning, and it was active learning. It was not just, once again, just information. It was actively learning, and we see that that has a lot of good effects with everybody involved. Likely to pursue a career, they were more likely for after attending the event. And really, we got a lot of interest in other professions that were represented there that students were not aware of initially. So that's the other part is when you go, you might not know the difference between an occupational and physical therapist. You might not know the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist. So once again, really harnessing all the different support to educate students is something that is going to, be great for them to go on their career path. And then interest in healthcare influenced by the event, 81% said more interested. Wow, that is definitely a great impact. So we can kind of look at that as it kind of continues on. but here we had engagement, and this was an actionable next step. There was something that was really discussed by the committee and also the network in having students understand, what is my next step? If I know where I want to go, if now I know what I want to be, and it might even be I need to go ask somebody these questions, or I need to go find out this information, but what is their actionable next step so that we can continue supporting students on those career pathways for whether it's apprenticeships, job shadowing, or even professional as well.
And James, I'll just mention
Yeah.
that those next steps, those were not choices the student had. It was open-ended, so they were writing those in. So they only checked off, do they have an actionable a next step, yes or no? And then it gave them an option to write in. And so this is kind of like a summary of what some of the students were writing in.
Yes, and graduate high school and go to college. Those are great plans. So we can see those. But you really see students interested in learning more and being more engaged, and obviously being part of their decision making for their careers, which is really nice. Here are student positive feedback here that we kind of saw. Variations, everyone liked to see the different careers. They got to practice CPR and kind of have those hands-on experiences there. Everybody was enthusiastic. And of course, one of the benefits of hosting it on UW's campus is now students can see themselves on the campus. They can see themselves as a student. And that's that whole experience of these kind of career fairs. And, when the discussion kind of happens about expanding the attendance, we are kind of keeping in mind other venues, larger venues. But, once again, there is kind of some pros and cons with whether or not it's on a campus, on an educational campus, or even a industry representative as well. So lots of good feedback there. Constructive feedback, wanting to keep students more organized. But as you know, when you have 500 students, that's a little bit challenging because students want to kind of go everywhere. They talked about being crowded and overwhelming. One of the things that we did do differently at this event is we moved the educational partners to another floor, and it did add more space on the main floor. So that was in response to some similar feedback we received last year as well. Spread out the booths, and there seemed to be a lot of interest in sex education booths with STDs and STIs. So as students are becoming more knowledgeable of themselves and all the different precautions, obviously that's got to be represented in those career fairs. And then, having more time at each station. So, once again, I think this just speaks to the need and the desire of students to be engaged and obviously continue working in that space as well. With lots of different partners, this is the planning committee. We want to thank the planning committee for all their efforts here. It was definitely a labor of love. We started in the fall, continued all the way through the spring. And so the committee was definitely appreciated, and we appreciate everyone's efforts. And then, of course, we had sponsorship, financial sponsorship here. We had the gold sponsors, Seattle Office of Economic Development, silver sponsors, Washington State Centers of Excellence, Southwest AHEC, as that was mentioned earlier. And then, of course, we had the bronze sponsors as well, Seattle Children's and Kaiser Permanente. And once again, these events cannot happen without financial sponsorship. And I think just roughly, I think this event costs 35,000-ish, and that's already with some deep discounts that we got with partnering with Doctor for a Day at UW, having some relationships built. So when we look at different venues, sometimes that can increase that cost. And one of the main costs that we see always kind of important is going to be the food and snacks for students. Right, we a lot of us in our budgets, we can identify an expense line to help with a facility, with maybe the transportation. But when it comes to food and snacks and water, that's definitely something that has to come from a little bit different funding mechanisms to have that. And that's usually our largest bill is going to be food and drinks for 600 people when you include the volunteers. These are all the different participating organizations, fantastic collaboration and support, and we really are thankful to everybody for that support, because it does make an impact when we look at that. We have some announcements here. We're going to be kind of wrapping up this meeting here real soon. We have the healthcare industry leadership table on LinkedIn. It's on my personal LinkedIn profile. If you want to join, that'd be fantastic. Here's the link to join as well. And in that, what it's for is that I don't become, or we don't become, I'm sorry, as the conveners, the bottleneck for sharing information. If you have information for that information, you can post that on that LinkedIn group. It goes out. We've got a robust membership there, so please consider joining and sharing all your information. In fact, we share information weekly that we learn within healthcare. You've got grants, training opportunities, toolkits, and lots of other good, useful information for that. We have some upcoming meetings. We have the Q3 Talent Pipeline Committee work that's happening on 7/18, followed by the Q3 Summer Quarterly Meeting. Please put these on your calendars, and welcome to attend and bring a partner. What questions do we have from anyone or comments as we're closing out this meeting? I do want to thank everyone who participated, John, Dan, and Christina, and Brenda, and everybody else here, Vonetta. Thank you so much, and really appreciate your attendance. Once again, this is the support partner meeting, and this is where we come together to talk about the quarterly meeting and what are ways that we can kind of lean in. We talked about, AI in healthcare, lots of good experiences there. We talked about the behavioral health updates and obviously startyourpath.org website, and then the Sound Careers in Healthcare, which was a fantastic event and got lots and lots of success. So as we kind of round out this season, or this quarter, if you will, and really get into summer, we are going to be looking at a lunch and learn with King County Behavioral Health Coalition. That'll be coming out in August, and then we're getting right around for September. So I'm just going to open it up for any last comments from anyone. I saw people come off of mute, and I was assuming that people were going to make some comments. So, but really want to thank everybody for their partnership and all your support. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. And summer is coming. It's not here yet, but it's coming. It's almost here. I can feel it. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you, James. Take good care.
Take good care. Thank you.